Henry Mitchell was the kind of man people walked past without a second glance. As a janitor at Innovatech, one of the most prestigious tech companies in the country, he moved through gleaming hallways like a shadow, his mop gliding across the floor while corporate giants in expensive suits walked past him, their conversations too important to be interrupted by a mere custodian. Still, Henry took pride in his work. Every morning, he mopped floors until they gleamed, emptied trash bins overflowing with coffee cups, and refilled supplies before anyone even noticed they were low. He greeted every employee with a warm smile and a polite, "Good morning." Most ignored him. Some barely registered his existence. Others were cruel. "Careful not to slip. Henry might offer you a mop instead of a lawsuit," one employee joked, earning snickers from his colleagues. Another sneered, "I don't know why you bother smiling, Henry." Nobody's impressed by a janitor. Even the executives, the ones who made millions, barely acknowledged him. But Rebecca, one of the senior managers, was the worst. She made sport out of making his life harder. She deliberately left her coffee cups on desks, on the floor, anywhere but the trash bin, knowing Henry would clean up after her. Sometimes she'd spill her drink and make no effort to wipe it up. "Oh, don't worry about it," she'd say mockingly. "Henry will take care of it." But Henry never let it get to him. He simply nodded, smiled, and carried on. Because he knew something they didn't. One day, during his break in the maintenance closet, Henry leaned against the wall, taking a rare moment to rest. Then, voices outside the door. Urgent, desperate. Rebecca, and another manager, Alan. "Rebecca, we're screwed," Alan hissed. "The CEO just announced a company-wide innovation competition. Every department has to pitch a groundbreaking idea or face brutal budget cuts. We haven't submitted anything," Rebecca scoffed. "What do you expect me to do, Alan?" "No one on our team has an idea worth presenting." Alan groaned. "If we don't come up with something, our entire budget is getting slashed. We'll be replaceable." Henry exhaled slowly. He shouldn't have been listening. But something inside him clicked. Unknown to anyone at Innovatech, Henry had a passion for programming. In his free time, after long shifts cleaning empty offices, he studied coding, AI, and machine learning. And now, these executives, the same ones who looked down on him, were desperate for a solution. And Henry? He had one. That evening, as Henry cleaned Alan's office, he hesitated, his pulse thrumming in his ears. Then, he took a deep breath. If he didn't speak now, he never would. "Sir," he said, standing straight, "I couldn't help but overhear your conversation earlier. I believe I have an idea that could help." Alan looked up, startled. "You?" Alan's lips quirked in amusement. "Henry, you're the janitor." "Yes, sir. But I've spent years studying machine learning in my spare time, and I think I've come up with something your team could use." Alan raised an eyebrow. "Go on." Henry pulled out a neatly folded notebook page from his pocket and placed it on the desk. "Imagine an AI-driven app that analyzes internal communication patterns and detects workflow bottlenecks before they become problems. It would predict efficiency drops and suggest solutions, improving overall productivity by at least 30%. Alan stared at him, then at the paper, then back at Henry. The room felt still. "You came up with this?" Alan finally asked. Henry nodded. "Yes, sir, and if you let me, I'd be happy to help build it." Alan exhaled, rubbing his chin. "Come by tomorrow," he said after a long pause. "If this works, Henry, you might have just saved us." The next day, Rebecca found out. And she was furious. "You're telling me," she scoffed at Alan, That you're trusting the janitor with the fate of our department? Have you lost your mind?" Alan, who had spent the night reviewing Henry's idea, wasn't laughing anymore. "Rebecca," he said calmly, "the janitor just gave us the best idea we've had all year." And just like that, Henry found himself inside the meeting rooms, working alongside the developers, turning his concept into a real, working prototype. Rebecca didn't make it easy. She snapped at him, dismissed his suggestions, belittled his experience. But Henry never fired back. He just let his work speak for itself. And when the day of the big pitch arrived, the prototype was flawless. The conference room was dead silent as the CEO and board of directors examined the presentation. Then, after what felt like an eternity, the CEO leaned forward. "This," he said slowly, "is exactly the kind of innovation we need at Innovatech." He smiled. "Congratulations, Alan. Your team just secured full funding for next year." Rebecca's smug expression collapsed. Alan stood, clearing his throat. "Actually, sir," he said, "the credit goes to Henry Mitchell." "Who?" Alan turned to where Henry sat in the background, quiet as always. "Our janitor," Alan said proudly. "He's the one who came up with the idea. He's the one who built it." All eyes turned to Henry. The CEO's brows lifted. "A janitor, you say?" He studied Henry, then the project, then Henry again. "Why on earth are you cleaning floors when you have this kind of talent?" Henry smiled humbly. "I've always believed that no job is too small if it's done with pride," he said. "But I'm grateful for the chance to prove what I can do." The CEO was so impressed that he offered Henry a full-time position on the development team with a massive salary increase. Rebecca transferred to a less prestigious department, without a say. The story spread through Innovatech like wildfire. The same people who once ignored Henry now greeted him with respect. But Henry? He never changed. He still smiled at everyone, still treated the janitors, receptionists, and security guards with kindness. And every day, when people asked him about his journey, he always said the same thing. The value of a person isn't determined by their title. It's what's inside and how they treat others that truly matters.